The Nightmare Before Christmas in 3D. Now, is this the first movie to ever undergo a 3D conversion? So far as I can tell, it's the only 3D conversion I'm aware of that was done by ILM. And to my memory, it just seemed to be the first out of the gate, though I don't really find anything that says as much. It just really seems like the first 3D conversion. Let's compare it to the original and see what they've done. I remember hearing a lot about how they made much about how they went through it meticulously on each frame. And what I've noticed is a lot of what they did really had nothing to do with 3D. It seems like they spent a lot of their time doing background cleanup and changes. And the 3D itself is pretty shallow. Now, when this came out, most 3D was pretty shallow. Look at the top of the doorway there. They just took that out for some reason. I wonder why. I wonder why. I wonder if that was for the aesthetic of the moment or if that was a 3D decision. I haven't seen this movie in years, and it's funny what time does to a memory. It's a short movie, but I remembered it as a much longer movie. And I wonder if the uniqueness of the various shots just made a large impression that skewed my impressions of time, that I was so engrossed in thinking about the weird things I was thinking, it just seemed like time would stop. Look here, they removed the feather. Now that's part of an old-timey pen that he was writing with, and it's in other shots. Just for this shot, they decided to get rid of that. And there are lots of interesting. Look at the cage in the lower corner. They just decided to play with that. I noticed they played with the background in a lot of shots. Funny. I remember this as more of a love story than anything else. Not that it isn't per se, but it is more of a misadventure, isn't it? With his admirer just sort of hanging out in the shadows, watching it all unfold. I sense the real story is Sally's story, though. Her father is a smart guy who knows he's smart and demands Sally give him her constant attention. She spends the movie running away from him. Yet who does she run to? Jack. Who is Jack? The Pumpkin King. He's a smart guy who knows he's smart. So smart, he also listens to no one and spends his life having his ideas entertained by everyone else. I got the impression the father and Jack are much the same person. It's interesting what they... I noticed they took a lot of blur away. Things that they blurred in the original, they kind of removed that. Again, did they just prefer the aesthetic, or was it did it help the 3D? I don't know, because it does seem like they gave it a fuller frame in the updated version, unless the smaller frame was just how they happened to print the old one on the Blu-ray, but I don't see why. Growing up, I was always told Halloween took place in the fall because that's when everything started to die for winter. But I noticed that kind of fails when you learn cultures from around the world all seem to have a ceremony of the dead right around the endish of October, maybe getting into November, some of them. And recently I heard a theory that Halloween actually goes back to its beginnings were actually a remembrance of Noah's flood. A compelling thought. The flood is the only story in the Bible that actually has an exact date. So depending on your calendar, it would have started around the third week of October, most say. And there is a record of ancient Egyptian traditions of floating a coffin for a month starting around that time. And also ancient kings like to claim lineage and ceremonially invoke pre-flood superhumans, believing that they had supernatural power and knowledge. And disapproving Hebrews, though they believed these beings to be evil, and their spirits became what we call today demons. So it's not hard to imagine a somber remembrance turning into a joyful celebration of evocation for those who believe these demon things could offer you something. And then that kind of became our dress-up party of Halloween, this in the present day. Now, this is a very shallow movie, and I've heard many people be very disappointed by its shallowness. Look what they did to that moon. I wonder if they shrunk it just to keep it inside the frame more. Also, look at the flowers and the tombstone. They kind of shrunk how thick that tombstone is in front of her. Did they just like the look, or was it better for 3D? I have no idea. I didn't find it too bad when you're actually watching it. It had some better moments than others, but I think its overall darkness works against the stereo 3D. When everything is black, it just has a naturally flat feeling to it. And I noticed at the end, there's some bright white snow that really perks up the overall experience. Again, I wonder why they messed with the trees in the background. And this, they completely... I wonder if this was just easier to just go ahead and animate some brand new snow for the 3D version rather than spend time trying to make it draw it into stereo. So on the extras, I learned that this was intended to be a reverse Grinch story. I think the biggest Grinch here was Santa Claus. He seemed pretty grumpy at the end. Usually Santa's the jolly all-knowing one.